Part 1. The call that changed everything. I was halfway through my morning coffee when my phone rang. Not a casual buzz, not a missed call. It rang, and rang, and rang again. The screen showed Evan Carter, accountant. Evan never called this early, and he never called twice in a row. When I finally answered, he didn't say hello. "You need to come to my office, right now." I laughed softly. "Evan, it's barely 8. Can this wait an hour?" "No," he said. His voice was tight, controlled, scared. "Do not talk to anyone. Do not call your partner. Just come." That was the moment my stomach dropped. For 15 years, I'd built my company from nothing. For 10 of those years, I'd built it with my business partner, Mark Reynolds, my best friend, my brother in everything but blood. We trusted each other completely, or at least I thought we did. As I drove through empty streets toward Evan's office, my mind raced. Was there a tax issue? An audit? A mistake? What I didn't expect was that within the next hour, I would discover my partner had been stealing from me for years, right under my nose. And the worst part, the numbers didn't just show theft. They showed a plan that ended with me losing everything. Before we go any further, if you enjoy intense real-lifestyle stories about betrayal, hidden truths, and shocking justice, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. These stories unfold step by step, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. When I reached Evan's office, he was already waiting by the door. No smile, no small talk. He locked the door behind me. Then he placed a thick folder on the desk and said the words that still echo in my head. "This isn't an accounting problem. This is a crime." I stared at the folder. Inside it were numbers that told a story my partner never wanted me to read. And once I did, there was no going back. What happens in Part 2? You'll see the exact financial evidence my accountant uncovered. And the moment I realized how deep the betrayal truly went. Part 2, the numbers don't lie. Evan didn't sit down. He stood behind his desk, arms crossed, watching my face like a doctor about to deliver a diagnosis he already knew would change a life. "Before you open that folder," he said quietly, "I need you to understand something." I looked up at him. "You're scaring me." "I'm being honest," he replied. "What you're about to see isn't a mistake. It's deliberate, calculated, and it's been happening for a long time." My fingers hesitated over the folder. For a split second, I wished I could walk out. Pretend this call never happened. Pretend Mark was still the man I trusted with my signature, my company, my future. But once doubt enters your mind, you don't get peace until you face it. I opened the folder. The first page was a summary sheet. Clean, professional, cold, unaccounted transfers. $3.2 million. Shell vendors, 4. Time frame, 6 years. I blinked. "That number is wrong," I said automatically. If that much money was missing, I'd know. Evan finally sat down. That's what makes this brilliant. He never took enough at once to trigger alarms. He spread it out. Small amounts. Consistent patterns. He slid another page toward me. Bank statements. Highlighted lines. Monthly transfers labeled as operational expenses. Consulting fees. Vendor payments. Except those vendors didn't exist. "These companies," Evan said, tapping the paper, "were created using burner addresses and virtual offices. The payments funnel into one parent account." My chest tightened. "Whose?" He didn't answer immediately. He turned his monitor toward me and typed a password. The screen refreshed. Account holder, Mark Reynolds. The room went silent. I felt heat rise behind my eyes. Not tears, not yet, but something sharper. Anger mixed with disbelief. "That's impossible," I whispered. "We sign everything together." Evan shook his head. "You used to. About 6 years ago, you gave him limited signing authority while you were overseas expanding the West Division." I remembered. "I trusted him. He never removed you," Evan continued. "He just buried your approvals under automated workflows. You stopped seeing the microtransactions." I leaned back, the chair creaking under my weight. 6 years. 6 years of lunches, celebrations, handshakes, speeches where Mark called me his brother. "And this is just the surface," Evan added. He flipped to another section of the folder. Legal documents, drafts, unsigned, but prepared. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "Contingency plans," Evan said. "Buyout clauses, emergency board votes, papers designed to remove you from operational control if certain conditions were met." My mouth went dry. "What conditions?" Evan met my eyes. "Incapacity, legal trouble, or reputational damage." The air felt heavier. "You're saying he planned to push me out?" "I'm saying," Evan corrected gently, "he planned for a day when you wouldn't be able to fight back." My phone buzzed on the desk. A text message. Mark. "Hey, brother. Lunch later? Big things coming. Can't wait to tell you." I stared at the screen. The timing made my hands shake. Evan noticed. "He doesn't know yet," he said. "I kept this off the system. No alerts, no digital trail." I looked back at the folder, at the years of lies printed neatly in black ink. "What do I do?" I asked quietly. Evan leaned forward. "You don't confront him. Not yet." I frowned. "Why not?" "Because if he realizes you know," Evan said, "he'll move faster. Drain accounts. Destroy evidence. Spin the narrative." He paused. "If you want justice, you have to let him believe he's still winning." I exhaled slowly. For the first time since the phone rang that morning, something inside me hardened. "Then tell me," I said. "What's the next move?" Evan closed the folder. "We gather proof," he said, "and then we watch him hang himself using his own paperwork." I nodded. Outside, the city moved on like nothing had changed. But my partnership, my friendship, my entire life, it had just split into before and after. What happens in part 3? I return to the office and sit across from my partner, smiling, pretending, while secretly setting a trap that could expose everything. Part 3. Smiles, handshakes, and a loaded silence. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw numbers, columns of them, marching across my mind like accusations. 6 years, millions siphoned away, a friendship reduced to spreadsheets and lies. By morning, I made a decision. If Mark thought I was still blind, I would let him keep believing it. I showered, dressed sharper than usual, and walked into the office wearing the same calm confidence I'd practiced for decades. The receptionist greeted me like always. The elevator hummed. Everything looked normal. That was the strangest part. Mark was already in the conference room when I walked in, standing by the window with a coffee in hand, phone pressed to his ear. He turned when he saw me, and broke into a wide smile. "Perfect timing," he said, ending the call. "I was just telling the board we're about to enter our best quarter yet." "Board?" The word hit differently now. "Good morning," I replied evenly. "You look excited." He laughed. "Big plans. You'll love them." We sat across from each other at the long glass table, the same table where we'd signed contracts, toasted deals, and once celebrated surviving our first lawsuit together. "Lunch still on?" he asked casually. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. He launched into his usual routine: market projections, expansion talk, subtle reminders of how essential he was to daily operations. I nodded at the right moments, asked safe questions, let him feel in control. Inside, every word felt like a test. At one point, he slid a folder toward me. "Just routine approvals," he said. "Mostly vendor renewals. I've pre-checked everything to save you time." My pulse jumped, but I didn't show it. I opened the folder slowly. Vendor names blurred together until I saw one I recognized from Evan's report. A shell company. Same name, same formatting, same lie. I looked up. "This one? Consulting services? What exactly are they handling now?" Mark didn't hesitate. "Data optimization. They're external, so it keeps payroll lean." A flawless answer. Too flawless. "Good," I said, signing my name. Mark smiled, satisfied. That smile nearly broke me. After the meeting, I went straight to my office and locked the door. Then I called Evan. "He gave me another approval," I said quietly. "Same vendor." "I expected that," Evan replied. "Did you sign?" "Yes." "Good," he said. "That gives us confirmation of pattern and consent on record." "Meaning?" "Meaning when this comes out," Evan said, "he can't claim it was a one-time error, or that you approved knowingly. The structure proves intent." I stared out the window at the city below. "How much more do you need?" I asked. "Two things," Evan replied. "Time, and a reason for him to make a bigger move." I frowned. "You want him to steal more?" "I want him to get bold," Evan said. "People like Mark don't stop when they're comfortable. They escalate when they think the end game is close." I thought of the contingency papers, the buyout clauses. "He's planning something," I said. "Yes," Evan replied. "And when he does, we'll be ready." That afternoon, I sent a carefully crafted email to Mark. Subject: future planning. I wrote about stepping back, about legacy, about maybe trusting him with more authority in the coming year. It was bait. His reply came within 10 minutes. Warm, encouraging, almost relieved. That night my phone buzzed again. "Mark, proud of what we've built. You deserve rest. Let's talk details soon." I set the phone down. He thought he was winning. He thought I was tired. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't see, was that every move he made now was being documented, tracked, and preserved, not for revenge, for truth and consequences. What happens in part 4? Mark makes a bold power move involving the board, forcing me to decide whether to reveal the truth too early or let him dig his own grave deeper. Part 4, the boardroom trap. The call came 2 days later. "Emergency board meeting," Mark said, his voice calm but tight. "This afternoon, all partners present." I knew before he finished the sentence. This was it. I arrived early as I always did. The boardroom lights were dimmed, the city skyline glowing behind the glass walls. One by one, the board members filtered in, familiar faces, polite nods, quiet conversations. Mark entered last. He looked confident, too confident. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began, standing at the head of the table. "I'll get straight to the point. Our company is at a critical growth stage, and we need decisive leadership." I leaned back in my chair, hands folded, heart steady. Mark clicked the remote. A presentation lit up the screen. "Strategic restructuring proposal." My name appeared beside his. He continued, "As many of you know, my partner has been considering stepping back from day-to-day operations. After several discussions, I believe the best path forward is a transition plan that allows continuity without disruption." One board member glanced at me. "Is this something you've agreed to?" Mark smiled before I could answer. "We've talked about it informally. Today is about formalizing the process." He clicked again. "Temporary executive authority." Mark Reynolds. The room went silent. I felt it then. The shift. This wasn't just about restructuring. This was a takeover. "With full executive authority," Mark continued, "I can move faster, secure new investments, and streamline our operations. This is a temporary measure, of course, until we finalize long-term plans." Temporary. The word hung in the air like smoke. I cleared my throat. "And what protections are in place?" I asked calmly. "For the company, for shareholders." Mark turned to me, surprised by my composure. "The standard ones. Oversight clauses, regular reporting." I nodded. "And financial transparency?" He hesitated, just a fraction of a second. "Of course," he said. "All spending will continue as usual." I looked around the table. "These decisions affect more than speed," I said. "They affect trust." Mark laughed lightly. "That's exactly why we need this. Trust in leadership. Unity. Unity." The irony almost made me smile. A board member spoke up. "I'd like to review the supporting documents." Mark slid folders across the table. "Everything's there." I knew what was there. I also knew what wasn't. As the board flipped through pages, I noticed Mark watching me. Not the documents. Me. Waiting. Testing. This was his move. He expected me to object emotionally, to stumble, to reveal weakness. Instead, I closed my folder and stood. "I support the discussion," I said evenly. "But I'd like 72 hours before any vote." Mark's smile faltered. "Why delay? We're ready now." "Because," I replied, meeting his eyes, "decisions made in haste are rarely wise. And this company was built on patience." The room murmured. The chairwoman nodded slowly. "A short delay seems reasonable." Mark's jaw tightened. "We're risking momentum." "No," I said quietly. "We're protecting integrity." The vote was postponed. Mark stormed out the moment the meeting ended. I stayed behind, pretending to gather papers while my phone vibrated silently in my pocket. A message from Evan. "Evan, he's panicking. Just authorized a large transfer through a new entity, bigger than before." My chest tightened. "How big?" I typed. "Evan, enough to bury him." I looked at the glass walls, at the city he thought he owned. Mark hadn't just made a move. He'd crossed a line. And now, everything was in place. What happens in Part 5? Mark accelerates his plan and makes a fatal mistake that triggers an audit, a confrontation, and the beginning of the end. Part 5. The mistake that couldn't be hidden. By the next morning, the company felt different. Not quieter, tenser, like a building holding its breath before something collapses. I walked into my office and found 3 unread emails from Mark, each one more polished than the last. Updates, reassurances, a reminder of our shared vision. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Evan. "He moved the money," I said. "Yes," Evan replied. And this time, he rushed. That was Mark's weakness. He was careful when he felt in control, reckless when he thought victory was close. "How bad is it?" I asked. Evan exhaled slowly. He authorized a 7-figure transfer through a newly formed entity. No operational justification, no supporting contracts, and this is important. He flagged it as urgent executive expense. My grip tightened around the phone. "That bypasses internal review," I said. "Exactly," Evan replied, "which means it also bypasses protection." I stared at the framed photo on my desk. Mark and me, years ago, smiling after closing our first major deal. "Can you trace it?" I asked. "Already did," Evan said, and I froze the documentation before he could alter anything. "Good," I said. "Then it's time." At noon, I sent a single email. Subject: Internal Financial Review. Mandatory attendance, board members. Legal counsel. External auditors. No accusations. No drama. Just process. Mark arrived late. He scanned the room. Lawyers at the table. Auditors setting up laptops. And his confidence slipped. "What's this?" he asked, forcing a laugh. "Feels a bit excessive." "Routine," I said calmly. "You said transparency mattered." He nodded slowly, sitting down. "Of course." The lead auditor stood. "We'll begin with a review of recent transactions." Mark's foot started bouncing under the table. As numbers appeared on the screen, I watched his face carefully. At first, relaxed, then confused, then tight. The new entity appeared, highlighted, flagged. The auditor paused. "Mr. Reynolds, can you explain the purpose of this transfer?" Mark cleared his throat. "Consulting services, strategic acceleration." The auditor tilted his head. "Can you provide the contract?" Mark glanced at me. "Just for a second. I don't have it on hand," he said. "No problem," the auditor replied. "We'll pull it from records." Silence. Then another auditor spoke. "There is no contract." The room shifted, and she continued. "The recipient account is registered to an LLC you personally control." Every eye turned to Mark, his face drained of color. "That's not," he began. Evan stood. "With respect," he said calmly, "we've documented similar transfers over 6 years. Different entities, same destination." Mark stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're ambushing me." "No," I said quietly. "You ambushed yourself." The chairwoman folded her hands. "Mr. Reynolds, we need you to step outside." Mark looked at me. Anger, betrayal, fear all tangled together. "You planned this," he hissed. I met his gaze. "You planned worse." He was escorted out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. It sounded final. 2 hours later, the board reconvened. The vote was unanimous. Mark Reynolds was removed, effective immediately. All accounts frozen. Legal action initiated. When the meeting ended, Evan approached me. "You did the hardest part," he said. "You waited." I nodded. I had to. As I gathered my things, my phone buzzed. A message from Mark. "You think you've won, but you don't know everything." I stared at the screen. Then I typed back, "I know enough." I didn't block him. Not yet. Because something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. What happens in part 6? Mark strikes back with a public smear campaign, forcing me to choose between protecting my reputation or revealing a truth that could destroy his forever.
Part 6. The Lie He Took Public. I should have known Mark wouldn't go quietly. Men like him never do. The morning after his removal, my phone exploded with notifications, missed calls, emails, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Then I saw the headline, "Former CEO accused of financial mismanagement, sources claim internal power struggle." My name wasn't in the title, but it was everywhere else. I opened the article slowly, already feeling the weight in my chest. Anonymous sources, insider claims, carefully planted doubt. According to the piece, Mark had been forced out after raising concerns about my leadership. The article suggested I'd approved questionable expenses, ignored compliance issues, and used my influence to silence opposition. It was a lie, a dangerous one. Within hours, the story spread. Industry blogs picked it up. Social media ran with it. Even a few investors called, their voices cautious now instead of confident. By noon, the board chair called me directly. "He's trying to flip the narrative," she said. "And he's good at it." "I know," I replied. "The question," she continued, "is how you want to respond." I stared at the window of my office, watching people rush along the sidewalk below, unaware that years of work could be shaken by a few well-placed lies. "What are my options?" I asked. She paused. "You can issue a statement denying everything, or you can release the full audit." My hand tightened around the phone. The full audit wouldn't just clear my name. It would destroy Mark. Every transfer, every shell company, every calculated theft. Once released, there would be no turning back. "I need time," I said. "You don't have much," she replied gently. "He's counting on that." That afternoon, Evan came to my office. "They're calling me too," he said. "Fishing for comments." "And?" I asked. "I told them the truth," Evan replied. "That I don't speak without facts." He sat across from me. "You know what he's doing, right? He's trying to scare me into silence." "No," Evan said. "He's trying to bait you into a half response. Something vague. Something he can twist." I leaned back. "And if I stay quiet?" "Then he fills the silence with his version." I closed my eyes. For years I'd built my reputation carefully. Quiet competence, stability, trust. Mark was trying to burn it all down because he had nothing left. "What happens if we release everything?" I asked. Evan didn't hesitate. "Criminal charges, civil suits, possibly prison, and the company." "Short-term shock," Evan said. "Long-term relief." I thought of the boardroom, the employees, the people who trusted us with their livelihoods. I thought of the 6 years Mark stole while smiling at me. Then my phone buzzed again. A private message. "Mark, if you value your legacy, stay quiet. This ends badly for both of us. I stared at the screen. Legacy.
He still didn't understand. I typed one sentence back. You ended this the moment you lied. Mas. That evening, I called the board. I want everything released, I said. No summaries, no soft language. There was a pause. Then the chairwoman said, Understood. Mas. The report went public the next morning. Not as gossip, as evidence, documents, timelines, account numbers. By noon, the headline had changed. Former executive under investigation for multi-million-dollar fraud. Mark's name was everywhere now. And for the first time since this began, my phone was quiet. Too quiet. Because when the truth comes out that loudly, the real fallout hasn't even started yet. Mas. What happens in part 7? Authorities get involved, Mark makes a desperate final move, and I'm forced to confront him face to face, one last time. Part 7, the visit no one scheduled. The knock came just after dawn. Not loud, not rushed, measured, the kind of knock that tells you whoever is on the other side already knows you're awake. When I opened the door, 2 federal agents stood on my porch. Badges visible, expressions neutral. Mr. Hale? One asked. I nodded. We'd like to ask you a few questions regarding an ongoing investigation. I stepped aside without hesitation. Inside, they were direct, professional, and already informed. They didn't ask if Mark had stolen from the company. They asked how long I'd known. I told them the truth. Every step, every document, every decision to wait instead of react. When they left, one of them paused at the door. You did the right thing, he said quietly. Most people don't. Mas. By midday, Mark's accounts were frozen. By evening, his name was no longer whispered. It was cited. And by nightfall, he did something I didn't expect. He showed up. Unannounced. Alone. I saw his car from the window and felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't fear. It was closure approaching. I opened the door before he could knock. He looked smaller. No tailored suit. No confident posture. Just a man whose world had collapsed faster than he could outrun it. They're coming for me, he said immediately. You know that? Yes, I replied. I do. He stepped inside, eyes scanning the room like he was memorizing it. I never meant for it to go this far, he said. It started small. It always does, I said. He turned sharply. You don't understand the pressure I was under. I met his gaze. I understand choice. Silence stretched between us. They'll destroy me, he said finally. My career, my name. You did that, I replied. I just stopped protecting you from it. His jaw clenched. You could still help. Tell them you approved everything. Say you were involved. I almost laughed. That's your final move? I asked. Dragging me down with you? He stepped closer. If I fall alone, I lose everything. I held his stare. You lost everything the moment you decided I was expendable. His shoulders sagged. For a brief second, I saw the man I once trusted. Then it was gone. I thought you were weak, he said bitterly. Too loyal, too patient. I nodded. You mistook restraint for weakness. He turned toward the door. Before he left, he stopped. You know what hurts the most? He asked. You didn't even yell. You didn't fight. I answered honestly. Because this wasn't a battle. It was an ending. He left without another word. Mas. 2 days later, Mark Reynolds was arrested. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. The news ran his booking photo. No smile, no control. Just consequences. Mas. The company stabilized faster than anyone expected. Investors returned. Employees relaxed. The board moved forward. And one evening, sitting alone in my office long after everyone else had gone home, I realized something important. Justice isn't loud. It doesn't always come with shouting or revenge. Sometimes it arrives quietly, right on time. Mas, what happens in part 8? As the trial approaches, a surprising truth emerges, one that forces me to confront my own blind spots and decide what kind of leader I'll be after. The dust finally settles. Part 8, The Blind Spot. The trial date was set faster than I expected. Once the evidence went public, momentum took over. Prosecutors didn't need persuasion, just confirmation. Subpoenas followed, depositions, long days that blurred together in windowless rooms where truth was reduced to timelines and signatures. And then came the question I wasn't prepared for. Not from lawyers, not from journalists, from myself. Mas. It started with a deposition. Mark's attorney leaned forward, fingers steepled, voice calm and precise. Mr. Hale, he said, for 6 years, you reviewed financial summaries prepared by your own team. Are you saying you never noticed irregularities? I'm saying, I replied carefully, that the summaries were designed not to show them. He nodded as if agreeing. Then he asked, or is it possible you trusted your partner because it benefited you to do so? The room went still. I felt the weight of the question land, not as an accusation, but as a mirror. I trusted him, I said, because we built the company together. But you didn't verify, he pressed. You delegated. Yes, I said quietly. He leaned back. So isn't it true that your leadership style, hands-off, relationship-driven, created the opportunity for this fraud? There it was, the blind spot. Not guilt, but responsibility. Mas. That night, I didn't go home right away. I stayed in my office, lights off, city glowing beyond the glass. I replayed years of decisions in my mind, where I chose speed over scrutiny, loyalty over oversight. Evan called around 9. You okay? He asked. I am, I said. Just thinking. He paused. About what? About how this happened, I replied. Not just who did it. Evan was quiet for a moment. That's the right question, he said. Mas. The next morning, I called a meeting. Not with the board. With the managers, the department heads, the people who kept the company running long before headlines ever noticed us. I stood in front of them without slides or speeches. I trusted the wrong person, I said. And I trusted a system that didn't challenge that trust. No one spoke. So we're changing that, I continued. Transparency won't be a promise anymore. It'll be a structure. I announced independent audits, rotational oversight, clear separation of authority. No exceptions, especially not for me. A hand went up in the back. Does this mean you're stepping down? Someone asked. I shook my head. It means I'm stepping in, differently. The press didn't like that answer. They wanted a villain or a martyr, a resignation or a scandal. What they got instead was boring. Process, reform, accountability. And oddly enough, that steadiness worked. Employees stayed. Clients renewed. Trust, once cracked, began to mend. Not because I demanded it, but because I earned it again. Mas. A week before the trial, I received a letter from Mark. Handwritten. Short. I never thought you'd outlast me. I read it once. Then I placed it in a drawer and closed it. Not everything needs a reply. Mas. The night before opening arguments, I stood in the empty office one last time and looked around. This place had seen ambition, loyalty, blindness, and betrayal. Tomorrow it would see judgment. But tonight I made a promise to myself. If this company survived, it would do so without secrets, without blind faith, without anyone ever again mistaking silence for safety. Mas. What happens in part 9? The trial begins, a hidden witness takes the stand, and the truth comes out in a way no one, including me, expected. Part 9, the witness no one prepared for. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in feeling. Polished wood, neutral faces, A room designed to strip emotion away and leave only facts behind. I sat behind my legal team as the judge entered, the sound of the gavel cutting through the low murmur like a warning. This was no longer a business dispute. This was history being written in public. Mark sat across the room, thinner now, jaw clenched, eyes fixed straight ahead. He didn't look at me once. Not when the charges were read. Not when the prosecution laid out the timeline. Not when the numbers, millions of them, were projected onto the screen for everyone to see. Fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. Each word landed heavier than the last. The first witnesses were expected, auditors, forensic accountants, compliance officers. They spoke in clean language, unemotional and precise. Dates, transfers, patterns, evidence. Stacked on evidence. Mark's defense tried to poke holes, suggesting misunderstandings, shared responsibility, corporate complexity. Then the prosecution called their next witness, a name I hadn't heard in years. Daniel Mercer. My breath caught. Daniel had been one of our earliest hires. Quiet, brilliant, the kind of employee who fixed problems without asking for credit. He'd left abruptly 5 years ago, citing personal reasons. I never questioned it. Now he walked to the stand, older, sharper, eyes steady. The prosecutor began gently. "Mr. Mercer, can you explain why you left the company?" Daniel glanced at Mark for the first time, then looked at the jury. "Because I was told to help hide illegal transfers," he said calmly. The room went dead silent. Mark's head snapped up. Daniel continued, voice unwavering. "I was instructed by Mr. Reynolds to reroute internal alerts and falsify reporting thresholds. When I refused, I was offered a bonus. When I still refused, I was pushed out." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. This wasn't just theft, it was coercion. The prosecutor asked, "Did you keep records?" Daniel nodded. "I kept everything. Emails, screenshots, internal messages." The screen lit up again, this time with Mark's words in black and white. "Don't overthink it. No one's watching. If Hale asks, we'll say it's operational smoothing. You're protected as long as you stay loyal." Mark's attorney objected. The judge overruled. Mark's face drained of color. I didn't feel triumph. I felt weight. Because that was the moment I realized how many people Mark had tried to pull down with him, and how close he'd come to succeeding. Mas. During a recess, my attorney leaned toward me. "This changes everything," she whispered. "This witness seals it." I nodded slowly. Across the room, Mark finally looked at me. Not with anger, with something closer to regret. But it was too late for that. Mas. When the day ended, the media swarmed the courthouse. I said nothing. No statements, no victory speeches. That night, alone in my office, I opened my laptop and reread Daniel's testimony transcript. One line stayed with me. I stayed quiet because I thought someone more powerful would speak up. I closed the screen. That was the blind spot. Not just mine, everyone's. Mas. What happens in Part 10? Final. The verdict is delivered. The company faces its future, and I make a decision that defines not just my legacy, but the kind of power I believe in moving forward. Part 10. The verdict and what remained. Final. The verdict came on a Friday afternoon. The courtroom was full, but silent, like everyone inside already sensed what was coming. I sat with my hands folded, eyes forward, not watching Mark, not watching the jury. I was listening to my own breathing, steady and slow. The foreperson stood. We, the jury, find the defendant, Mark Reynolds, guilty on all counts. The words landed without drama. No gasp, no outburst, just finality. Mark closed his eyes. His shoulders dropped, not in surprise, but surrender. When sentencing was scheduled, he didn't object. He didn't look at me. And for the first time since that early morning phone call from my accountant, I felt something loosen in my chest. not victory. Release. Nas. Outside, reporters waited. Cameras flashed. Microphones reached toward me with questions I'd rehearsed answers for, but chose not to use. I won't comment on the case, I said calmly. But I will say this. Truth doesn't need defending forever. Eventually, it speaks for itself. That was all. I left. In the weeks that followed, the company stabilized fully. Not because the scandal was forgotten, but because it was addressed openly. We rebuilt systems. We empowered oversight. We encouraged dissent. Most importantly, we listened to the Daniels of the company. The people who saw things early but felt too small to speak. Daniel Mercer was rehired, not as a favor, as recognition. On his first day back, he stopped by my office. I didn't testify for revenge, he said. I just didn't want anyone else carrying that weight. I know, I replied. And I'm sorry you carried it alone. He smiled faintly. Not anymore. Nas. One evening, months later, I found myself alone in the office again. The same view. The same city lights, but everything felt different. Lighter. I thought back to the moment Evan said, "This isn't an accounting problem. This is a crime." He was right. But it was also a lesson. Power isn't about control. It's about responsibility. Trust isn't blind faith. It's accountability. And leadership isn't proven in success, but in what you do when success is threatened. Nas. I locked my office door and headed home. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new risks, new people to trust carefully. But one thing was certain. I would never mistake silence for loyalty again. And I would never ignore the quiet voice that says, "Look closer." Because sometimes the most urgent call isn't a warning. It's a chance to finally see the truth. The end.